Alright, welcome back to my channel. Tonight I'm going to be doing my ranking for all of the Alien movies in the franchise. I've just reviewed the new film Alien Romulus, and I have recently binge watched the franchise leading up to that. So I've solidified my new ranking in my mind. It has changed since the last time I watched these films, and I'm here to share with my list with you now. And I have got 9 films to talk about. This is also including the 2 Alien vs Predator films. I know some people don't consider them part of the series. I guess they're not exactly canon. But whenever I watch the Alien movies, I just think of them as being part of it. You know, they're 2 feature-length films involving the aliens, so I like to include them. But this is just my personal list of my favourites in order. Please do let me know yours down in the comments section. So anyway, let's get into my list. So down at the bottom in number 9, I'm going with Alien vs Predator Requiem. This one definitely stands out to me as being the worst of the series. I can still have some fun with this movie. It is entertaining in some ways, but it's just a bad movie. There's so many things about it that don't work. There's so much going on. They throw tons of different plot points and characters all at you in such a short running time. You have no real chance to kind of invest yourself or care about anything that's going on. I also think when you've been used to enjoying all these amazing settings of the alien world, like all the space stations and the different planets, all this kind of stuff, and here a lot of the drama is taking place in a pizza shop or a parking lot, and it just doesn't have the same vibe. It makes the whole thing feel a lot cheaper, and that's something that's just really off-putting about this entry. I think probably the best thing about it are the creature effects. You know, there's a lot of effort has gone into all of that stuff, the brutality of it all. But even then, it's badly edited, it's poorly lit. So most of the time, you can't exactly make out anything that's going on. So not much fun to be had there. And the whole Predator-Alien hybrid thing, it does feel like something that was designed and written by a teenager. So wasn't impressed with this movie. As I said, it's not quite as bad as some people make out. I can have some fun with it, but it's easily for me the worst of the whole Alien series, and still to this day I have no idea what Requiem is. Number 8, I'm going to go with the original Alien vs Predator, the Paul W.S. Anderson film. If you've seen his Resident Evil movie, you pretty much know exactly what you're going to get if he was to do an Alien and Predator film. You know, it's lots of monster fights and action, very hollow characters, enjoyable enough time. It's not offensive. It is what it is. But it's one of those movies that the day after you've seen it, you can't remember a single thing about it. There are some fun moments in it. You know, I do actually quite like the idea they've had here for bringing the aliens and the predators together, kind of having the predators using it as like a hunting ground where the human sacrifices, all this kind of cool stuff. And there is a good scene as well where they're hoisting up the frozen alien queen. That was quite impressive. But other than that, the characters are so forgettable. They really are just set up to be cannon fodder. The lead actress, again, can't remember a thing about her. And it's very obvious here they were cutting away as much from the action as possible to get the American PG-13 rating. So even the action isn't that intense. So really, overall, there isn't a lot to take from this film. It's not terrible. I can watch it and have some fun with it. But just such a forgettable movie. So that's why it's my number 8 choice. My number 7 choice, I'm going with Alien Resurrection. And this film's just really a mixed bag for me. When I watched it again the other week, I did consider putting it down lower. But, you know, as time is going on, I find that there are still some interesting and effective moments in this movie, so that it does just stick with me more than the bottom 2. And, you know, there are some really powerful and effective moments in this film, and I think that the problem is that for every good moment, there's 3 or 4 horrible moments, like a lot of really strange scenes and characters and dialogue and just weird moments, like that whole basketball scene. That really just encompasses everything that I don't like about Alien Resurrection. The whole vibe is off to me, and every time I get to the end of it, I think to myself, there's something about this movie that I just really don't like. But as I say, there are some good sequences here, like the whole scene where the crew has got to get to another part of the ship, and it's through a section that's submerged in water, and once they get through that, there's all these alien eggs on the other side. That's a great sequence. And there's another scene where Ripley is discovering all these like clone experiments where they've been trying to infuse her DNA with the aliens and they've kind of gone wrong. There's really cool and interesting moments like that, but like I say, every time you get one of those, there's a weird character moment or one-liner or some slapsticky moment. So yeah, I don't really know how to feel about Resurrection, especially as well with the cloning thing. Like, I like the idea of another way to bring Ripley back, a few hundred years in the future, having Sigourney Weaver back in the role, and she's cloned. She's not really the same Ripley we knew before. She's kind of a strange version of her. But the way they execute it, the whole thing with the hybrid DNA of the alien, it just comes across really badly. Like, when you get that final scene of that horrible looking human-alien mix creature that they made, where, I mean, it looks absolutely disgusting. And when you see Ripley weeping as this thing is being sucked out of the side of the ship, I hate that those are the final moments that we get to see this great character of Ripley for. So many mixed things about this movie. I kind of enjoy it and don't enjoy it at the same time. So there you go. It's not for everyone. Some people probably do enjoy Resurrection. I'm just not one of them. Number 6, Alien Covenant. And this, don't get me wrong, I'm not somebody that hated the direction that Ridley Scott decided to take the franchise in, going for a more sci-fi angle, dealing with more philosophical elements. I was all for that. I really like Prometheus. As you will see when we get to that on the list, I'm very positive about that film. I was just really let down by this sequel. I think the most interesting part about it is the whole storyline with David, the idea of this creepy AI off the leash after the end of the Prometheus mission, has just been living in this cave for years, kind of considering all these philosophical things and messing with the biology of these aliens. And there is something weird and interesting about that whole storyline, but there are moments in it where some of the dialogue feels a little bit unnatural to me. I feel like the movie in some ways thinks it's a little bit smarter than it actually is. Like the way David is presenting some of his ideas as if they're really profound. Why would humanity be clinging on despite the fact they're going extinct? It's like there's perfectly good explanations for why all these things could be happening and answers to the questions that he's asking. But they talk about them as if these are the deepest questions that have ever been asked, and something about that just doesn't sit right with me. But still interesting nonetheless. Where this movie starts to really lose me is in the second half, where they decide to go the full action route, where you've got the scientists when they're back on the ship, and you've got the whole scene with the alien, and it's very, very CGI'd, computerized scene, almost like something out of a video game where she's hanging off the ship fighting with the alien. And there's just no weight to it whatsoever. I start really losing interest, losing engagement. I hate how CGI'd as well the alien looks in this one. I have no idea what Ridley Scott was thinking, because, did he not look at this and think, why is it that the alien that I, filmed back in the 70s, 40 years beforehand, looks so much better than this? I can't get my head around it. And even Prometheus looked fantastic, and this is a massive step down in every regard. So I watched this a few years ago for the first time, and I had mixed feelings about it. I just wondered whether I wasn't in the right mood. I thought, surely this is good, and went back to it, and I left it thinking it was even worse this time. So maybe this should be lower, actually. The way I'm talking about it, it should be lower. I did still give it a 3 out of 5 on my letterbox, but yeah, it's a misfire of a movie, I think. I don't think it really works. It's not as interesting or as clever as it thinks it is, and it was a real letdown for me at this point in the franchise. Okay, from number 5 up, I would say we're at a point now where I like every movie onwards from here, or at least find them interesting. These are all good movies, ones that I would choose to watch again, not just doing a binge of the whole Alien franchise. So with that said, number 5 choice, I am going with, of course, Alien 3. And this is one of those movies where over the years, a lot more people I've seen have been warming to it. And I can definitely understand why. I'm not all the way there yet. It's still very mixed for me. I think there's a lot of good things about it, and there's a lot of bad things about it. And Yeah, it's an interesting movie to talk about. I'll say that. Think of all the movies, the ones where I like to get into discussion about them. Alien 3 is near the top of that list for me because it's such an odd movie. Just, when you hear about all of the behind the scenes issue, of course, it's being David Fincher's first film, everything like that. It just makes the whole thing very interesting. I do genuinely think the first hour of this film is very good. Once you've got used to the different tone to the first two, it's a lot darker, a lot more somber, a more depressing tone about it, scaled way back from everything that went on in Aliens. But if you can get into that vibe of the movie, I think there's a lot to get from it. I love the character that Charles Dance plays. I thought he was really interesting. I love the relationship he has with Ripley as well. Feels very convincing to me, now that she's alone in this world, after the loss that she's had from of characters in the previous movies, and she meets this guy and they just kind of hit it off because of the situation and the circumstance. I really buy into that, so I love all that stuff. And when the alien is kind of creeping around in the shadows and you get little glimpses of it, I'm all for the movie. I really like it. The main problems with Alien 3, though, it's difficult to forgive the movie for that decision to kill off-screen in the opening credits two of the best characters we've had in the whole franchise. How the arcs of Newt and Hicks were built up, and that great ending with aliens, and it's all undone in an opening credits scene of a much worse film. There's something about that just doesn't sit right with me, and I get why a lot of people just can't move forward with the movie because of that. So that was a terrible decision. I think they could have handled that a lot better if they weren't going to include those characters in the story. And I also think the last hour of the film really suffers, where once you lose the Charles Dance character and you just have all of these prisoners that you can't really get on board with, they're not very likeable at all, they're not that interesting. And they're just running about these tunnels with some kind of plan to get the alien into the molten lava, and it's just confusing and you can't really keep up with what's going on. All the effects work on the alien at this point where it's running around just look absolutely ridiculous. I was having a conversation recently with one of my friends on YouTube who told me that it's actually not CGI. I don't know what it is, but I can't remember what he said it was, but it looks horrible, whatever it is. Especially in the first half where you get the practical stuff and it looks really good. In the second half, it just looks absolutely terrible. No idea what they were thinking leaving all of those in the final cut. The whole final hour, it loses me, and by the end I'm like, did I actually like that movie? I'm not sure. So yeah, it is a mixed bag. I do think if you are going to watch it, you should watch the longer assembly cut of the movie. It's about half an hour long. It's a long movie. But there's just more of the characters to flesh out. There's more details in here that do make for more of an interesting experience overall. So I know there are some people that are coming around to this movie. Some people really hate it. I can kind of understand both sides with this one. And as I say, I am somewhere in the middle. So that's why it's number 5 for me. Number 4 for me is going to be Prometheus. We're getting into really good movies here. I genuinely don't understand the hate that Prometheus gets. I can understand if you're somebody that wanted a classic Alien or Aliens film again, especially with Ridley Scott after all these years coming back to explore the elements that he set up in Alien. If people were expecting that from this, I can understand why you'd find this off-putting. But I think if you go into it expecting it to be its own story, I can't see the issue with Prometheus. I think it's a great sci-fi movie. There's a lot going on here. I love all the ideas being explored with the engineers and all of the goo and the alien creatures. And they just set up this character of David, Michael Fassbender, amazing performance from him. Just this weird AI off the leash, kind of wandering around the ship doing his own thing whilst all the chaos is going on. There's something about this movie that I just really enjoy. And this is one, again, that when I rewatched, I found myself thinking, this is really good. I'm so surprised about the amount of criticism this movie gets. I love Noomi Rapace as well, that actress. I think she does a great job with this character. Very intense scene with her when she has to get into the surgical chamber and remove the alien from herself. That was a great, probably the most grotesque scene in the entire Alien franchise, I think. So a lot of great things. I don't think it's a perfect film. It has issues, I think. There are some questions that I don't think are sufficiently answered here, like the whole thing about the engineers having created us. it's like, how many things do you have to do away with for that to make sense? Like the theory of evolution is what is just a complete coincidence. We were created by these things and they left a map for us to their military base. Why was that? You know, certain questions that when you really start to think, they may be answered here, but I find that it's too difficult to kind of work out what they were trying to tell us exactly with that storyline. So there's definitely some issues here. And I do understand that some people will think that this movie is riddled with characters who make stupid decisions. And I think I can buy that in certain scenes that are maybe not so convincing. But to me, it's always seemed obvious that in life-threatening situations, people do dumb things. They say stupid things. They try and get out by doing dumb things. It's a known thing that is the case. That's not the sort of thing that would ruin a movie experience for me unless it was really jarring. And I just can't see that here in Prometheus. I do think that's something that people have jumped on the bandwagon saying, you know, sitting in the comfort of their bed saying, oh, I wouldn't do that in that situation, therefore the whole movie is garbage. And I just can't agree with that. So I think Prometheus is a great movie. I've seen it a couple of times now and I stand by my thoughts on it. I think it's a very interesting prequel and I really liked where Ridley Scott was going with this story. Number 3, it's the new one, Alien Romulus. And I was a little bit torn between this and Prometheus. There is the recency bias. You know, I am the sort of person that comes out the cinema, I get very excited about the new movie, especially experiencing it on the big screen with my friends on opening night. There's something about that, you know, sometimes over time you can rewatch it at home and, you know, you don't quite agree with the original excitement you had about the movie. But I have done a full review for this. I've given all my thoughts and I really liked the movie. It is a back to basics alien story, you know, putting a bunch of characters into a confined location by a great horror director. You know, people who are fans of his, I think, will love this movie. And it's just setting up a way for a bunch of people to deal with the alien threat. And all throughout the story, they have interesting elements put in there which were raised and brought up in the previous Alien movies. I do agree with what people are saying, that in some ways it feels like a very high budget fan movie or fan film. I do agree with that, but that's not a bad thing. I think it's clearly somebody who loves the franchise. People hated, or a lot of people really didn't like Prometheus and Covenant for going off and doing its own thing and getting too philosophical. So they said, let's come back, let's bring some aliens and some killing and some in a setting in space. Why not? And I can't see what the issue with that is. So I had a great time with the movie. I won't say too much about it here because I have got a review on my channel and I do plan to do a spoiler review for it as well. But highly recommend you go and see this whilst it's still out. I think it's another great addition to the Alien franchise. Not necessarily that the Alien franchise was calling out for a 7th movie, but, you know, the fact that we have it, I'm very happy with it and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. Okay, between the top 2, it's always a tight decision, isn't it? You know, a lot of people love Alien and a lot of people love Aliens. They're 2 masterpieces in their own right, I think. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have had a different answer. But as of now, my second favourite is Alien, the original Ridley Scott classic horror movie from 1979. And this used to be my favourite. I've seen this movie a number of times throughout my life. And there's a reason why on YouTube and on the internet you can find hundreds and hundreds of write-ups, video essays, analysis videos, all of this such sort of stuff on what makes Alien such a great movie, a movie that just works so well. And it's a really great immersive experience, you know, very relatable characters, just everything about it feels so real. Actually, that's one of the things about Prometheus, I would say, which is a bit of a negative, is sometimes the dialogue makes you feel like you're watching a movie, whereas here, everything is just very real, kind of like you're following the story of these characters who are workers on a ship. They've been out in space a long time, and the way they kind of discuss with each other, it's like you would really discuss something with people you work with. So it really just pulls you into the story. You aren't questioning certain things. So when everything starts to go wrong, and when they come into contact with this alien, you're just so invested in the situation. And yeah, there's so many brilliant things about Alien, and I do love, there was something refreshing about seeing this again, the fact that they still leave a lot of elements of the film and mystery. Okay, they did go on to explore the engineers years and years later, but just watching this as its own story, where it wasn't afraid to leave a number of elements, something just purely down to your imagination. They're not going to explain why that's there, why the skeleton of the engineers are there, how the AI, what all of the elements of the AI they brought in. You know, they didn't fully explore that. They just kind of gave you a few things to think about there. And I do appreciate about about a movie. I think it makes it scarier. It just leaves you with more to think about and more to talk about afterwards. Whereas I feel like these days movies do feel the need to absolutely explain in every detail every single thing that's going on. And I kind of really do appreciate that about Alien. So can understand anybody having this at number one. I still do give this movie a 5 out of 5 rating. I absolutely love it. But it's not quite my favourite in this franchise. And my number one choice is Aliens. Having watched this again recently, this is what finally solidified it as being my number one movie in the franchise. I honestly, I think it's flawless. I think it's an absolutely incredible film. Ripley's at her absolute best here. This is the best character arc for her by far. Such an interesting character, such a convincingly strong character. And I think especially when you watch the extended edition, the director's cut of Aliens, when you get all the backstory about how she lost this daughter, who, you know, while she was asleep while she was in hypersleep rather, it just adds so much more context as to why she would care so much about this character of Newt when she meets her, why she's willing to give up everything to get this young girl off this planet to safety. And I feel like it adds so much to the story there. So I absolutely love the character. I just think it's a great experience of a film as well. You know, James Cameron is a master of filmmaking, and this for me is actually his favourite. Yeah, even above Terminator 2, I actually do prefer Aliens. You know, everything from the whole slow build, meeting Ripley again, meeting all of these Marines, seeing how this whole mission's going to unfold, looking for this colony on the planet, kind of knowing that everything went bad, and when you finally get to all of the action, it's just absolutely explosive for the final hour. Some of the most intense horror and action that's ever been put to screen. It's quite an experience, this film. It really is. I just find as well, for a movie that has so many characters in it, nobody here feels like cannon fodder. You know, every single character gets their little moment to shine. Every single one of them is interesting. There's ones you love from the start. Even the kind of more nefarious characters here, and you at least find interesting. And even some of the characters that are more unlikable, like the captain, they still find a way to give you moments towards the end where you come around to really liking the character. They just, in what is only a 2.5 hour movie, I just feel like James Cameron managed to do so much with this, where you just really are invested and care about everything that's going on. And the way that Ridley Scott set up his original Alien, you think, who would want to touch that? It's a perfect movie in itself. Where do you go from there? And for James Cameron to come back and build on everything that was set up there, pay all respect to that movie, but make it very much its own thing, make it more of a horror action movie as well, and just do a number of new things in it, like introducing the Alien Queen, everything like that. I could talk about this movie all day. I really should release a full-length review for this, or do a commentary or something, because there is so much to talk about with this film, so much about it that just makes it the perfect movie-going experience. So I love this movie to death. It's easily one of my favourite movies of all time, and for me, easily the number one movie in the Alien franchise. So that is my ranking for the Alien franchise. Please do let me know your rankings of this series down below. Definitely one of the more interesting and unique franchises to talk about, and I'm sure people's lists are going to be wildly different from each other. So very interesting. Leave all your thoughts on that down below in the comments section. Also, please do consider subscribing to my channel if you've been enjoying my content. I would really appreciate that. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.